Hi, this is Dr. Toby, your host on Health and Wellness. Thank you for joining us. We have a special guest on the show, Dr. Satira Perry, all the way from Tallulah, Madison County, Louisiana, trained in some of the best schools across the country, Xavier University for undergrad, Meharry for her medical school, and then went to the University of Mississippi for family medicine. She's currently a new physician at the Madison County Hospital. She's a family physician with a board certification in integrative medicine. She's a woman of many parts. She's a daughter, she's a physician, she's an integrative medicine specialist, and she's also a believer who believes in the integrity of the Word of God. You don't want to miss this show. It's full of information, it's full of value, and it's full of great input. We'll be meeting on the last Friday of the month of December, December 29th, the Assembly Junior High, 11 p.m. for our Holy Ghost night. You don't want to miss it. God bless you. Jesus is Lord. Hi, this is Dr. Toby, your host on Health and Wellness. Thank you for joining us. We have a special guest. She's currently based in Tallulah in the Madison County in Louisiana. She moved there from Lexington, Mississippi, worked in Jackson, did her undergrad in Nashville, Tennessee at Meharry, went to the residency program at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, Family Medicine. Undergrad was at Xavier University, lived for most of her teenage years in the hills of North Carolina, Westbrook to be particular, and she took a year off to do cosmetology. And she now tells me today that she has a fellowship in integrative medicine. So she's a person of a lot of diverse parts. So want to welcome on the show today Dr. Satira Perry. What an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much. We're honored to have you. And Perry is very popular. The name Perry, Tyler Perry. I'm sure you have people who ask, are you related? Are you? Well, tell us a bit about your growing up years. Where did you grow up? And tell us about your family. Were you born into a... I just heard you say your dad was a physician.
Yes.
And your mom was a government worker.
She worked for the Social Security Department.
That's awesome.
Social Security representative.
Right.
I think that was her title.
Was your dad originally... Where was he originally? Home for him originally?
North Carolina.
Oh, North Carolina.
North Carolina was his original home.
Wow.
And so he went to medical school in Nashville, Tennessee at Meharry, and then came back to North Carolina. But he ended up serving in Asheboro, and I think that was where the National Health Service Corps, you know, had a location for him to serve. Yes.
Right. Where did he do his undergrad and high school? What part of North Carolina?
He did his undergrad at A&T State University in North Carolina, which is another HBCU.
Where did he grow up particularly?
He grew up in Salisbury, North Carolina.
Okay, interesting. Wow. Is that on the coast? Is that?
That is
you said
towards
the hills.
The center, well, the foothills.
The foothills.
Yeah, it's not really the mountains. It's kind of like the...
Because all of us, we know Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yes.
We know Durham. We know Duke, but a lot of the other places, not so much.
You don't really know. Well,
Salisbury. Huh?
Salisbury is maybe 30 minutes from Charlotte, and Asheboro is maybe an hour from Charlotte.
Because, you know, as a Christian, I know there's stories of people talking about the foothills of North Carolina where there were sparks of revival hundreds of years ago. You never heard of that?
I never heard of that.
In the mountains and the hills, you know, it was mostly the apostolic Pentecostal folks that had some great awakening there. Interesting. So tell us a bit about, you were raised in a two-parent home.
Yes.
You know, that's rare in 2023, right?
Unfortunately, yeah. It is, I guess, yeah. But
so your parents are unique. I mean, I'm not saying that's out of the norm, but 80% of African-American homes today are single-parent homes. Yeah. And it's unfortunately affecting the next generation.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So you grew up, when you went to Xavier, for example, were you surprised that a lot of your friends had single-parent homes, or you never asked questions? Or?
I know. I really didn't ask questions about that.
Right.
I know one of my really good friends, both of her parents, you know, she had two parents, and a lot of my friends, or several of my friends, I would say, had, you know, two-parent households. But
blended families.
Yeah, I think there were some blended families.
Is
But
that a
yeah,
good word? What do you think? Is the
what
word
blended
blended
families?
family?
I
It's
think it's
okay.
a good word.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
it's a good word because it is blended.
Right.
It's the
Right.
truth. But yeah, I'm blessed and I'm really grateful that I had the upbringing that I had.
Some people think generations like your parents and the generations before endured marriage. That means
Mhm.
the woman stayed, the man stayed, even though they didn't want to stay.
Mhm.
That today people just quit without thinking twice about it. What do you think of that? Do you think the marriage institution is not as valued, is not as treasured, is not as sacrosanct as in those
Hmm.
days? Why do you think we have more divorce cases in our generation?
I think that's partly true. I think it was, different. Our parents' generation was different than ours, and they had, different social pressures. And so it was necessary or more necessary to stay together and more beneficial, I think, to stay together than to be divorced.
I mean,
And
financially.
financially and then like socially, in terms of community, I don't think it, I think it was more frowned upon to,
Mm,
be a single mom or not have a husband. So the community, I think, supported, marriage or people staying together. Now,
mm,
I know, of course, people know of cases where people have, endured marriage and they've been, in marriages that were abusive
right.
or, not just physically, but financially. And of course, that's not healthy. But I think as we have become more like independent
Mm,
as a society, and then, we are exposed to so much more in terms of like social media. I think ideas of like marriage and individuality and
mm,
need for other people, I think that changes and that affects like your respect for marriage and
mm.
how you see it, like how important it is to you.
So, can you state clearly on this platform that your parents had a perfect marriage?
Oh no,
Okay.
nothing's perfect. And perfect is like it depends on who you ask, but
Right.
perfect is, so
So
but
they
nothing's
made it
perfect.
work.
They made it work. I mean, just like with anything, like if, you have a job and, there are a couple of people that you might work with that you do not like, but the goal is to
Put
be employed.
put some
So,
payment pay
right,
put some money on the table, right?
right. The objective is this is the objective, and so you manage, you adapt, you problem solve, and I think that is an important thing that maybe we don't do as much of, and we're easy to decide, okay, we're just going to throw this away because it's not giving us everything that we want all the time, but
Mm.
it's not supposed to. So
Do you think there's been a rise in the feminist doctrine amongst African American females? There's this thing about the dominant African American female who takes care of her bills, rules her household, does her own thing. What do you think? Do you think there's been a rise in that philosophy of successful females with a feminist mentality that maybe, just maybe, has caused some men to be less comfortable in their presence and
mm,
they feel dominated and domineered and
mm,
maybe it has affected the marriage institution to some extent because the older generation the females were in the background less vocal. The
mm-hmm,
newer generation like my younger sister 43 Harvard trained doctor,
mm-hmm,
they take the lead, they run the
mm,
show, they make decisions, they refer to their husbands but I know they make decisions.
mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm,
so you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
mm-hmm,
There's
mm-hmm,
positives in
mm-hmm,
that behavior. We've never wanted our females to be shackled.
mm-hmm,
But how
mm-hmm.
can we have balance so that we don't
Balance.
kill the marriage
Yeah.
institution because we don't want our females to be oppressed? You know what I mean?
Yeah. What you said, I think balance. That's like the primary, thing. I don't think it's healthy for, things to be, out of balance and out of order, for a really, really long time. I mean, I think in relationships, especially male-female relationships, you know, there will be times where, the woman may lead in certain things, and, the man, I think a male's natural role is leadership. I think that is kind of, you know, spiritually and physiologically, like
Right.
how, nature has created, your God has created men, and it doesn't take away anything from women because, you know, we lead in our own way.
Right.
And the gifts of being a woman, I think some of those gifts are the ability to, bring life into the world, the ability to, nurture, the ability to heal, um, the ability to foresight,
Right.
and to be able to actually see. So just because, one gender is characterized with these specific qualities doesn't take anything away,
From
I
the
think,
other.
from the other.
That's right.
And I think sometimes there's propaganda and rhetoric that we can get caught up in, and we can really kind of lose our way in terms of like how we think we should be, because we can get caught up in what other people's narratives are.
Right.
So I think it's important to really, self-assess and
So that
yeah.
stereotype shouldn't be across all. Because you met
Hmm.
one black dominant woman doesn't
Right.
mean you should make all women African American descent that nature.
Of course,
You
and that's
know,
with anything.
that's with
Yeah,
anything, right?
yeah.
Right.
Because I mean, um, it's easy to kind of want to like put people in a box because that seems like the easy way to approach life, but it's so much more complex than that, I think.
So, question on this again.
Yes.
How? What was the greatest lesson you learned from your mom
Hmm.
as growing up, and what was the greatest lesson you learned from your dad growing up?
I think the greatest lesson I learned from my mother is so many of them, but I guess the biggest one is love and doing the right thing. You know,
Mm,
um, whatever you do, good or bad, it will come back to you, whether directly or
mm,
indirectly.
right.
And and it's important to put out in the world what you want to receive. So for my mother, I think that's a big one, and just love and nurturing. My father, he he modeled for me like fearlessness and going out there and you know doing what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
like going for your dreams, achieving and at least trying to do whatever it is that you think, um, what God has put on your heart to do, just
Mm-hmm.
leading in that way. So he
Right.
was, he led in that way.
Oh.
Yeah,
Did you have siblings?
I do. I have,
Okay.
in my household, it was two siblings, two
Okay.
other siblings besides me.
Okay. Two
Brother,
boys or two girls
a
or one
girl and a
boy?
boy.
Okay. Where
Hmm.
are they now?
I have one that's in Texas and the other one is in New York.
Okay.
So yeah,
Medical.
they're not. One
Oh,
of my
really?
siblings is a teacher,
Okay.
and
In
the other
Texas?
in New York,
Okay.
and the other sibling he has a trucking company. He owns a trucking
Nice.
company.
Okay.
Hmm.
So you took after your dad, obviously. Were
Hmm.
you the oldest or?
I am the oldest.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you feel any pressure to take over the mantle of the doctor in the house? Because I've heard firstborns tell me
Mm.
there's this pressure they put on you that if you fail, all the others, like dominoes, fail. So the parents put a lot of pressure on the firstborn to
Hmm.
succeed. You didn't feel that kind of pressure.
Not the type of, I guess, malignant pressure where are nervous, or I never felt like if you don't do this, then you know you're just a failure. I never felt that
Hmm.
type of pressure, but I do think on some level, um, I felt a push. We'll call it a push, maybe you could call it pressure, to um, to move forward and
Mm.
to finish what I started.
So, do you realize that only 5% of doctors in America are African American?
Oh wow.
It's the numbers for African American male physicians today in 2023 are lower
Mm,
percentage wise than in 1979.
wow.
So what your dad achieved, I don't know, was that in the 80s
I
maybe?
was in the
In the
70s.
70s. What your
Hmm.
dad achieved, then he was part of like 2-3%
Yeah.
of the population, African American physicians.
Yeah.
So he broke the mold. He broke the, I don't know, there was no glass ceiling, but he was quite a high achiever in those
Yeah.
days, you know.
Yeah.
So do you know his story? What spurred him to medicine? Was it just he was an outstanding student and he got a
Hmm.
scholarship, and I'm curious why the health service call? Was it to serve, to
It
pay
was.
back loans,
I
maybe?
think it was student loan repayment.
Okay, okay.
Yes. As far as his inspiration for going into medicine, I don't know.
Mm,
I don't know if it was someone that he came across in his journey, or if he had an experience that made him want to go into medicine. But
mm,
it was something that from what I've been told, he wanted to do.
mm.
Um, and he did it.
Wow.
And I don't think he had any other examples, you know. But I just know that that was, one of the things that, he expressed to his, I think his older sister had told me the story. And, when he told her that he was going to be a doctor, she was just like,
Right,
kind of
because there
like, I
weren't
don't
that
know,
many
what are you
African
doing?
American
Right,
doctors, right?
right. And so he just went for it,
Oh
you
wow.
know. Hmm.
What would you say to people who, who say that it's those some dreams are impossible, and for example, there are people who think it's too expensive to go to medical school. It's
Hmm.
too long, it's too torturous, it's too
Hmm.
difficult.
Hmm.
What would you say to those, 10-year-olds, 20-year-olds? They want to be a doctor, but they look at the student loans, they look at the number of years you study, they look at the work that needs to be done, and they
Hmm.
just think it's out of order, it's out of the ordinary. What would you
Hmm.
say to that person? Some of them would
Hmm.
rather just, I'll be honest, maybe flip burgers or work at Kmart or do a 9 to 5, do a business degree and, get a decent pay, take
Hmm.
home pay.
Hmm.
But they
We,
have a dream to be a doctor. What would you say to that person? Is it worth it? What
it
your dad
is.
did, what
Oh
you
yeah,
did.
it is worth it. I mean, what my father did, changed the trajectory of like his family. And the thing about the time is going to pass anyway. You'll
Mm,
never get that time back. So, it's what you do moment to moment that's going to determine the future that you're going to have. I mean, um, the money part, of course, it does cost quite a bit of money to go to medical school, but there are ways that you can have your get your student loans repaid. And I think being a good steward of your money and um, understanding your finances, and making sure that you set up ways that you can pay those loans off, it's doable. It's completely doable.
mm. So my viewers want to hear you like lesson by lesson. So I want
Hmm.
you to give us one example
Hmm.
of a difficult moment in medical school
Hmm.
or residency.
Hmm.
And because people want to be real, they want to know the real truth. The
Hmm.
reason is they want to know how you got over that hump.
Hmm.
Because if you
Hmm.
tell them, then maybe they can also apply that. Because
Hmm.
I know you didn't pass every exam in
Right.
flying colors.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
there were some you
Definitely.
were, I know you didn't fail, but you were, hard times, right? We all
Hmm.
did.
Hmm.
So, what do you do when you face difficulty in the pursuit of your dream? How did
Hmm.
you encounter that, and how did you overcome it?
I think one of the most difficult things that I dealt with in just my journey was the death of my father.
Oh, sorry.
You know, no, thank you. But the last year of my medical school training, I was studying for a test, and uh, I was in the library, and I got a page, and I was thinking to myself, well, who's paging me? And
They
you know,
had pages?
well, page me over like a
Overhead.
overhead page to
Oh.
somebody was in the lobby waiting for me, and so to make a long story short, it was someone that was a family friend that told me that my father had died. He just suddenly had a heart attack, and so
How old was he?
he was 51. He was 51 years
Oh,
old,
wow.
and so just that experience was extremely difficult, and that was just one example. And how did I get through it? Um, you know, After his funeral, I just knew that that is what he would have wanted, and I knew that me stopping would have made things even worse.
Because you could have taken a year off
I could have
and
taken a year off, but that momentum, it would have kind of stopped that momentum.
that was the
And
interview season and all
that
that.
was the interview season, and I was coming up on the match and everything like that. Um, and I just, something inside of me was just like, I have to keep on going. Now, was it the most healthy thing to do? I don't know, but you know, I think staying focused on your goal and understanding why you are doing what you're doing. What your primary goal is. I think that's important.
And I'm sure he
Um,
had friends in the Meharry system too, like doctors who knew him from his medical school days.
yes,
Maybe like your teachers, some of them may have
I
been his
think so.
colleagues.
I think so. I never really met
So you could have pulled a few
anybody
favors if you needed
if I
to.
needed to.
You could
Yeah,
have taken one
yeah.
month semester off, but you didn't want to get off
I didn't
cycle.
want to get
And
off cycle. Yeah.
wow, and your mom supported you too.
She supported. Yeah,
Oh
she
wow.
wanted us to to continue and not to just stop. Because I know of other people who've had that happen and they never came back, and so um,
Do you know
I
that
don't.
that might explain your desire for integrative medicine? I know you don't see it that way, but I think 51 years old, your
Yeah,
father
yeah.
died, the man who you thought was, in your eyes, doing everything right, and he has a heart attack. So to you, it's like, there must be other
There's
things.
other things. But it's like you can we can see like when stuff is about to happen. We can kind of see when there are things that are like unhealthy things that are in place. It's just we may not be able to understand the intricacies of how it all works together to create like a heart attack. But yeah, we can. Our intuition, I think, leads us a lot in medicine more than we know. It's not
Acknowledge.
just randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. A lot of it, I think, is intuition.
Oh, wow.
So, but I will say this too. Another really difficult experience that I had was, initially I interviewed when I was in my residency. I had in mind that I wanted to go into surgery, and
For
so
residency.
for residency, yes, and I did not match in surgery,
Oh,
and so family medicine was actually the choice that I made when I didn't match in
in
surgery.
general surgery.
Yes, and it was a blessing. Like just when it all kind of boils down to it, this is where I was supposed to be. But that was a really difficult experience because you're dealing with self doubt. You're dealing with you're not enough. You're embarrassed, and just
So you had to scramble.
you had to scramble. I sure did.
And that's how you ended up in
That's
Mississippi.
how I ended up in Mississippi.
Your
Now
mom,
the secret's out.
your mom was like, "Where are you going?"
But that was like,
Mississippi.
yes. And so that was, that was like a really difficult experience because, you're trained and you're taught that, if this is you, if you're going through this process and you're there's something wrong with you. Um, and, just, I think my approach to it was
Mm,
I felt bad. I felt all those things, but I also I had to go back to my main objective, and that was, you know, you're not going to turn back.
right.
You know,
You're not gonna
you're not going to
stop
turn
being a
back.
doctor. You're not gonna throw in
Yeah,
the
you're not going to throw in
towel.
the towel. You can't.
Right.
And I think part of it was like I got to pay out those student loans back, so I have no choice.
That's awesome. Thanks for the open window into the soul of Satira Perry. We're grateful for that window experience, and it's real life. Everyone
Yeah,
has their tough times and challenges, and she went through that tough time. And is your mom still alive?
she is.
Wow. So,
Doing very well.
and she's taking care of her mom now, almost 20 years later.
Oh yeah, well my
Almost.
mother,
I mean,
she's
since your dad passed.
almost, yes, yeah, since my
Yeah.
dad passed.
Yeah.
Uh
So
huh.
life has gone on, and
Yes.
I'm sure her mom doesn't mind coming to Mississippi to spend some time with her
Oh yeah.
daughter now. So,
Hmm.
and I'm sure Texas is down the road. And what's the other sister
New
in New
York.
York? Oh my
Uh-huh.
goodness, that means she goes all over the country,
Yes.
you know. But we've been talking with Dr. Satira Perry, and a window to her soul, and she just shared her whole heart with you. Surgery, family medicine, family loss, her dad, her hero, and she kept pushing. You have no excuse. Jesus is Lord. God bless you.